My dad used to tell the best bedtime stories, and they usually center around these four characters who were based off of me and my siblings, but with different names and like variations. So my character's name was Pi instead of Ty. In each story, we would use our unique abilities and talents to save each other from something. Like once we were abducted by aliens and had to figure out how to get back home. They were really amazing stories. Like they had music that changed with the setting and the scene. They had like sound effects, lighting, design, and props. And sometimes he would use our dolls in the story, like as characters. He could just put so much life into them. I hope to pass on his imagination and humor. For this one scary story, he used this doll Buddy, and like Buddy rose from the dead, and we didn't touch him for weeks after that. Once around Christmas, he took another doll and did an interpretive dance to the first Noel, like as the doll. And it was funny at first, but then as he went on, we didn't see this huge 6'5" man and a 1 foot baby doll with like a motionless plastic face. We just saw a dancer, and then we cried because it was so beautiful.
So I grew up in France and I went to middle school there. And I had a really close friend that I had like grown up with since I was really little. And we got to middle school and we, like declared each other like best friends for life, and like I loved her so much and it was like really special to me. And like with teenage girl drama, like we like got into like an argument. We kind of stopped hanging out as much, and like I had told her like everything about my like deepest feelings, and like we kind of ended the friendship there, and like there was like a really dramatic "we're no longer best friends anymore" exchange by like messenger online. It was really sad at the time, and it like really broke my heart when I was younger. Like I remember crying to my mom about it, and it like hurt so much, and like I kind of didn't realize why. And then later when I went to college and like figured out that I was bi, I like kind of retraced a lot of old relationships and realized that I think I loved her in a way that was like stronger than friendship. And I think it might have been like the first girl I ever loved. And so like to kind of lose that at the time was probably even more like painful than losing a friendship, because I think there was a lot more going on in my head, which I didn't realize then, but then realized by like retracing kind of my history with relationships. When you come out, it's kind of hard to feel validated immediately, because also you can think like, well, maybe I've just liked like this one girl, or maybe I was like just attracted to this one person in this one moment. But then looking back at the past, it was super helpful to think that there were patterns, and this has been a part of me all along, and that I am valid in that. So I think that was really helpful. Even though it was like revisiting some pain, it was ultimately beneficial. There's also a certain security in defining things and like having a partner that you can actively claim as your partner, instead of, the hidden feelings I had in like friendship, which was like very different and like a lot more chaotic in like some ways, So I think that's like the difference now, is like being able to assert a partner as being my own, and, having that safety be like validated is really important, I think.
So I'll say this is kind of a sad story for me, and it's a story dealing with my grandmother. And so I'll preface this by saying my grandmother is one of like, she had, I want to say 12 aunts, and all of her aunts eventually died due to complications with Alzheimer's. And so my grandmother thought about this a lot when she was growing up, and as she watched her aunts kind of start to lose it. And so her solution was, she had this player piano. And if you don't know what a player piano, like automatically you put in a little roll of paper and it automatically plays. And so she had this player piano, and she selected a song for every single grandchild that would be born. And then from the time that they were very little kids, so from the time that I was very small, she would sit with just me. Even if my other siblings were around, she would have them go away. It would just be me, and we would sit there and we would sing the song on the player piano. And her theory was that if she trained herself to recognize this song as my song, then when she was older, no matter what the state of her memory, she would hear the song and she would associate it with me. And because it was a player piano, even though she could play the piano, she wouldn't have to. So she would sit there and she would play along with it. She would move her fingers along with it, and we would listen to the song and we would sing along So mine was You Are My Sunshine, and then she would call us like nicknames based on our songs. So mine was always Sunshine. And for the longest time, I had no idea like the reason why she was doing this, and it wasn't until I was maybe like 15 years old that she was like, "This is why I do this, and this is why I want you to keep coming over, and at least once, can we just listen to the song?"
Where do we start? Oh, something sweet. Let's start off with
Yeah.
something sweet.
We met at a party.
Oh God. Okay, we're starting there. Okay. Sure.
Actually, like this whole thing started off before I even met him. Like, I saw him on Instagram, and I saw that he is like an activist in like immigrant justice and things like that. And I was just like, oh my God, this perfect person exists. And I was like, well, like this person like goes to Chicago, but like I'm never gonna meet them. I just kind of left it, and I was like, well, whatever. I'll just like have this like crush I'll never think about ever again.
I mean, I didn't. I never really saw this coming at all. Well, what happened? So, I got invited to a mutual friend Gabe's party, and Stephanie, I noticed she was sitting right like on the other side of the room. I was on the other side of the room having Chicago conversations where they're like, "Hey, what's your major?" And I'm like, "Oh, please." I don't like having those conversations, and so I was really looking to have like more genuine conversations with people. And I remember after just introducing like myself to her, I asked her just immediately, it's like, "What moves you? What like gets you going?" And you were like, I was like, "Oh, well, I am interested in like immigrant issues," like that caught my attention, right? I just felt myself just being more reeled in by like her, and I asked her like, "Oh, like tell me more about like your family and everything." And you mentioned you were Peruvian, and I was like, "Ooh, another South American, great." And I was like, "I'm Colombian," and we were just like talking in Spanglish, just
Yeah.
code switching, and it was just like it was really fun because I never really get to talk to people who like to code switch in the way that we do.
I guess on top of like all the like code switching and like just talking and being ourselves and talking about like culture and things from our childhood and like things we like, we were like sharing music and like listening to a lot of like Natalia Lafourcade and like
That was beautiful.
it just like persisted. Like it felt like the night was not gonna end. Like it was just eternal. And I think you had told me like, oh, like something about pachanga. Like
Yes,
you
oh
were like,
yeah.
oh, there's this like monthly music thing. Like you should
Come
check
on.
it out or
Yeah.
whatever. And I was like, sure, yeah, like
I'll send you more information.
yeah.
Oh, it's always a sending you more information stuff. And then we exchanged numbers, and then
Mhm. Yeah, I remember we like add each other on Instagram and then on Facebook. Well, yeah, I made the first move.
yeah,
It
you
was-
did make the
it
first
was
move.
Very important to me.
I just took a nice little outfit of the day photo, and
Yeah, and I like sent him something like para de ser tan lindo.
stop being so cute.
Like yeah, and, like I remember like we're both very vocal about like mental health and stuff, and I remember you posted like a really long story about your own things, and I really identified with it, and I like commented back. It seemed like usually that's something that like people don't really talk about openly, and I like just so much appreciated like having someone else like to talk to about that, even like aside from like romantic feelings or crushes or whatever. Like it was just nice to have that.
It was in Spanish too, because I had to frame it in a very specific way that only people who like I knew were coming in from like my understanding of things culturally would understand, and thankfully that was you who kind of like responded.
I've never like clicked with someone like that, or been able to like talk about something so personal.
I remember,
Like even
yeah.
that night, like we were talking about mental health and talking about like my leave of absence from school.
That was the one thing that I really admired about you. That night that we met, she mentioned about her leave of absence. And for me, that was such a radical thing. I was like, what? Like, you took a break from this university? How is that possible? Like, I never taken a leave of absence before. So it was for me, like, the fact that she did such an approach for herself was, like, mind-blowing for me. And it just showed to me, like, your willingness, your tenaz, your strength to just say, I need to take a break and step back. despite what the odds say, right? You know, what this university says about mental health and what it says and doesn't say, rather. And I find that very, very admirable.
Sorry, I'm like crying. I'm like such a sap. But yeah, I think we've always like had this kind of language about our relationship as being based on growing together. Like, I want to grow with you. I want to live with you. I want to, you know, be myself with you. And I think all of those kinds of positive things are just so, so important.
Going back to that part in our timeline, right? At the moment, I was still learning very much about my own mental health, and I was exploring it for myself. For the most part, I've been used to other people explaining my mental health for me, and I was like, no, let me just put it in my own narrative. In the world where everything's just so erratic, and I freeze up, and I hesitate, and I don't take the next step, just being next to her has been a remedy.
I think in a lot of ways, like, Mateo has saved my life.
You mean that?
Yeah.
We just want to see each other happy. We remind yourselves each other that we just want to see each other happy. We check in on each other because we want to see each other happy. Yeah, us. Did that catch the high five?
Oh my gosh. So cheesy.
This is ASMR.
Oh my gosh.
ASMR relationship. This is the sound of our hand holding. Here's one of my favorite things, which is a peck of the forehead.
I hate it. Oh my gosh.
And yeah. I think we're good on stories.
Yeah.
He was at Inglewood, and I think he was scheduled to take her to the prom, but apparently something fell through on that. And I've been hitting on her anyway, you know, and so she agreed to go to my prom if I take her to her prom. we went. I say we went together. It's sort of a misnomer because we were separated more than we were together. So I was working. Then she went down to Urbana, and I went back to school. And then when she came back, I broached the subject, and we got married. But so we were long distance romance in a sense. I don't know how all that worked itself out. So it was a strange get together thing. And then of course went overseas, had Mark, and come back. We were back in Meade, Fort Meade, and then we had Yvonne and Shirley, and went back to Germany, had Tim, and that was pretty much it. The next time I got signed to Germany, they said bye. Nobody went with me. I went to Germany by myself, and then from Germany I went back to Vietnam, and when I got out of the service, they were settling in Lawton at that time. But that was pretty much it. I'm glossing over some high points, and there are some mid points, I suppose, and low points. It's really a strange, what you would call a love story. Mm-hmm. It's just a coming together of two people. That's all that stayed together for 63 years. And that was not counting the 4 years I claim we went together. Yeah, a lot of lost memories. You know, every once in a while, one to dip his head up and comes through for me to remember. I think in terms of how strong the love could grow in the declining years of Dolores' health, because there I was there, Johnny on the spot for her, and especially when she went in the hospital. I would stay in the hospital with her. And I remember one time, as I was walking out, she said, "I love you." I kind of say, "I love you too." We used to do that, There was where love really showed its head. That sums up, I guess, where the love really became keen in terms of being taken for granted in many respects, I suspect. But I looking back on it now, and I feel that the love was the strongest at the end. And I didn't want to let her go. But I think it was in letting her go was saying, I love you. I'm sorry, I'm breaking up over it myself. But I wanted to know that she went out with dignity and with love.